heartless that we would simply let people die on the streets. But I don't know if you noticed, Webster. I don't know if you noticed, but there is already some widespread death going on at the hands of the government that is justified by your saying that we need it for the welfare state. And despite the public's will being so against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, they continue to this day. The genocide of our current foreign policy and the global war on terror continues, despite the American people being against it, even though the American people think, well, we're just going to have the government to do this limited good work with welfare, with food stamps.
Ron Paul voted for the Afghanistan war. Ron Paul voted for the 9/11 resolution.
You're confusing Ron Paul, the man with the message of liberty. That's not what we're talking about.
You're a moving target now. In other words, if it's not Ron Paul, then who is it, right? And I'm glad you're distancing.
Well, I'm here to talk about ideas. I'm here to talk about philosophy.
Yeah, it seems like it's very convenient to retreat into abstractions when the concrete manifestation.
The concrete manifestation is Bilderberg Group. The concrete manifestation is the ongoing occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan. The evidence before us is the drone strikes that continue every single day. That is the byproduct of saying that we need government to take care of us. We need government to make us safe. We need to grant someone an arbitrary authority. That is what opens the door for tyranny. And if you think that we don't have that today, you're the one living in a fantasy world. If you're thinking that if we just get government correct, if we just do it right, then we'll have everything okay. No, it is in the nature of government that makes the current governmental democide that we are experiencing today possible. And it's made possible because there are enough people that agree with you who think that we need government to keep us safe and to provide welfare state.
By 2/3. You're supporting, what do you say? You're supporting Ron Paul's program to cut food stamps by 2/3? No.
I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's a move in the right direction. Absolutely.
How much would you cut?
Well, I wouldn't cut any immediately. I'd cut the foreign spending, and what I would do is localize it. My plan, instead of saying we're going to cut it, we're going to localize the income and the output of those programs to the state level. I think empowering local communities rather than a central authority to have a greater say in how we use government to take care of the impoverished no, not block grant it. You stop taxing the states and you let the states decide how they're going to fund those.
All right, look.
Why do we need a central authority to do this? Why do we need the federal government not? Here's the question. Why do we need government at the federal level and not to do things that can't be done at the state level? What can't be done?
It can be, but if they're not done at some level, I don't care what level they're done at. Your reading of the Constitution, I think you're reading the Confederate Constitution and not the U.S. one. Or maybe
I haven't cited the Constitution yet.
This stuff about what level with all these things. The point is,
well, I'd like to see it all the way down to the community level, down to the city level, down to the family and individual level, and have people actually be in charge of their own lives. But the way that we transition out of this system of central authority and statism that makes all of this democide and Bilderberg superclass possible,
a system of social Darwinism and the survival of the fittest, where rich oligarchs can thrive at the expense, they can act out their sociopath natures against working people with no protections, no...
Wait. Are you describing the libertarian vision, or are you describing Bilderberg?
The union busting. Well, these are now rapidly merging, aren't they? With, I would say, Thiel, to get back to something concrete.
Yes.
With these older guys, Rockefeller, David, and Kissinger, and Zbigniew, and Davignon, they're basically on their way out of the picture. The new generation of Bilderberg, I would say he's the leader of the anarcho-capitalist faction in there, and that will be the destruction of the social safety net such as it still exists, and the imposition of let's say, another 25% cut in the American standard of living, in addition to what they've done already. And the libertarians will be applauding that. In other words, the libertarians will be shock troops. They'll be the Sturmabteilung for that kind of austerity, as we've seen with the Tea Party and so forth.
Well, let's bring it back to Bilderberg. Do you think it could be possible do you think it could be possible that Peter Thiel is like a fig leaf, a cover? Because we know that the real conspiring, the real colluding happens not with everybody here, but with the select few in the hallways.
He's on the steering committee. He's not just somebody who wandered in to promote his presidential campaign or whatever it is, right? There are people who come to this because they think they can gain something from it, right? They're not devoted to the ideas. But when you look at some of the people that I've been mentioning in Thiel, Thiel is on the steering committee.
So what is it that he's looking to benefit from specifically? What is it you think that are Thiel's interests?
That Ron Paul spreads the ideological poison of this libertarianism, right, quite effectively. He dupes a lot of kids with his Leprechaun Act. And at the same time, he's the right wingman for Romney to get Romney in, because ultimately they wanted Romney, and they had made that decision. Look, we're here at the Marriott Hotel. Does that tell you anything? Marriott, Romney, Huntsman, they're all Mormons, okay? So the Mormons own the hotel. It's a Romney event. It's not an Obama event, right? Obama was the enemy of yesterday. Time to lift and shift, people. Romney is the new enemy. Rand Paul is campaigning for him. Ron Paul is his right-wing man. And what it shows is the inherent duplicity of what is called libertarianism. In other words, the deep dishonesty of this entire system of belief, which is claiming to be libertarian, but it's a creature of David Rockefeller. Goes back to David Ricardo, who was on the head of he was one of the people on the board of the British East India Company, and in that capacity he became an apostle of libertarianism.
Okay, so it couldn't be that the internet is waking people up. It's just Ron Paul duping people. No, I want to ask you one last question. Normally I start my interviews with this, but I want to give Webster Tarpley here a chance to bring us back to a note of unity about why we're here today, and tell us why it's important for you to be here and bring attention to the Bilderberg meeting.
Yeah, my goal here is to break the power of finance capital in the world, and to denounce them and to expose their program and what their actual deliberations are. I think they're picking Romney over Obama. They're going to be interested in seeing who's the vice presidential candidate. They want to see them. They don't have omnipotent power, but they have a lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of press, so it makes quite a difference. The other questions they have: what are you going to do about Russia with Putin? What are you going to do about China now that the Bo Xilai coup has failed? Is there some hope for a color revolution brought on by these guys in either Russia or China? What about the BRICS? The Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They've got a BRICS development bank coming. That's a real threat to the dollar. What are they going to do about that? These people here are the masterminds of the attack on the euro. The attack on the euro is completely planned in London and in Wall Street to save the dollar as a reserve currency. The problem that they have right now is Syriza, right? This wonderful movement, which I recommend people look at. You want to see somebody who's actually fighting for humanity. Alexis Tsipras of the Syriza movement, the left bloc, right? Roll back austerity, no wage austerity, no pension austerity, rehire the government workers, stop the anti-worker union busting fascist measures of the IMF, social justice, arrest bankers who have been part of the embezzlement and so forth in the run-up to the crisis, and debt moratorium. In other words, Greece cannot pay this debt. They're going to have a debt moratorium like, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, 35 other countries have done it. That's what they're going to need. So that's the action. In other words, people in this country have said, we got the left anarchists with ad busters at the Occupy, and we've got Peter Graeber and Julian Assange and the whole crew of left anarchists. And then we've got the right-wing anarchists who are going with Ron Paul. So you're supposed to choose between that gang and that counter gang. And I say no, you need something that looks much more like Syriza, class conscious, fighting demands, break the power of the bankers with a direct attack. And that's Alexis Tsipras is going to become the Prime Minister of Greece sometime in the month of June. He's gone from 4% to 30%. He's showing everybody how it's done, how you do it. And the way you do it is not ad busters and culture jamming and this other garbage. It's organization. He's melding together 12 components into his block. He's got a leader, it's him, and he's hanging tough. He's got a strategy, which is don't give in to the IMF, and he's got a program, which is the 5 points that I just went through. By the way, you look at my website, I got 5 points.
And what's your website?
Tarpley.net. Okay, so that's the thing that leads out of the crisis. In other words, a New Deal for Europe. Break the power of finance capital. Now, what they're talking about here is, should they have a coup in Athens or not? Are they going to have a coup to try to avoid, before this election or after the election? What are they going to do? Are they going to try, God knows, violent solutions, wet work. That's typical for these characters. Like political assassination is their stock in trade, right? And it goes against all sorts of people you wouldn't expect. What else are they talking about? Are they going to attack Syria and/or Iran in the immediate weeks ahead, right after this whole...
Hey, just as an aside, would you say that the independent media is providing some limit on what they think they can get away with, and in a way restricting their power by providing some form of oversight, as limited as it is, that when they say we should have a war with Iran, well, maybe we should instead have a humanitarian war with Syria, because we can't get away with this absurd just propaganda over and over. People are seeing through it in regards to Iran, that the independent media is having some effect in that sense.
It has some effect, but I wouldn't be so optimistic. I would be rather pessimistic, and I would say the following. If you want to exercise political power, you need an organization. And this is where the libertarian mindset fails completely. The libertarian mindset fails because there's no understanding that political power grows out of organization, not out of the barrel of a gun or any other nonsense, out of mass organization and class consciousness. That is where power resides. And if you're not willing to go down that route, you can hope for the best. But all of this independent media didn't stop the attack on Libya. It hasn't. It hasn't. It has failed to do a whole bunch of things that it needed to do.
Well, I'll get right on planning that central authoritarian-based plan for achieving liberty, and then the libertarians can take over the world and leave everyone alone.
You're ignoring the existence of a world economic depression of awesome proportions.
Well, we're not ignoring that, but I was going to wrap up with that, man.
The threat of genocide is inherent. It's built into this current situation. Anybody proposing austerity cuts is not only a class traitor, but is essentially going along with the program of finance capital, which is the guys that we have here at the Bilderberg. And that's again where the libertarian view, right, does it mean you have to be a scab and a strikebreaker and an enemy of mass struggle, and you want to strip the American people of their economic rights? I'm afraid in practice that's what it often means. And then of course you get some rhetoric about anti-war, but if Romney is benefiting from Ron Paul, Romney is the biggest warmonger. He thinks Russia is the main enemy of the United States. He says the option to attack Iran should not be on the table but in my hand, says Romney. And now with a vote for Ron Paul, you're supporting that. Just remember, a vote for Ron Paul in the primaries has been a vote for Romney.
All right, so here it is, the final last word of this interview. I'm really grateful for the time. It's been fascinating. You have an incredibly acute mind, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Your last chance, any last words to all the internet libertarians out there that might be watching this?
What you could usefully do, as I said, probably the easiest thing to do is get out there and denounce and discredit the Hula massacre in Syria. This was done by NATO death squads. It's very clear. It was Al-Qaeda and Salafists, terrorists, coming into Hula. They burned down the hospital. They massacred everybody coming out of the hospital. They even brought cadavers from other sites. This is basically, it's modeled on Hitler's Gleiwitz radio station, false flag of 1939 that started World War II. Up to now, the situation in Syria has been, a lot of it looks like Czechoslovakia, right? The way the destabilization of Czechoslovakia, but that didn't really lead to a war. It led to the destruction of the country. Now we're into the examples that look much more like Poland, which is where World War II actually started. So don't believe that Hula massacre. Get on Twitter and elsewhere and counterattack that mass brainwashing. Right now there's this drill going on, right? Operation Eager Lion 12. Eager Lion 12 is 17 countries, 12,000 troops. It's in Jordan, mainly U.S. and NATO, some Egyptian, some Pakistani. That is essentially the drill that would go live to attack Syria. So support, in contrast to Ron Paul, get out there and campaign for the Walter Jones resolution, right, that tells Obama, if you attack anybody, you'll be impeached. At least.
Right, that was awesome to see Walter Jones submit the bill to impeach Obama.
Yeah, I was amazed that Ron Paul, didn't build it into his stump speech. He didn't do anything with it. I think he finally grudgingly became a co-sponsor, right? But he doesn't do anything that might embarrass Mitt He's there for Mitt. You gotta see that, right? Everything comes down to Mitt and Rand. Mitterrand, right? Sounds like a French president. So stop the attack on Syria. I would say that's the main thing, say, in the next week or two.
Ladies and gentlemen, Webster Tarpley, tarpley.net. Check the link below.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, that was really blessed. Hey, everybody. Who wants their chairs back?
Did I shake anybody's orthodoxy? Huh?